CNN's Priscilla Alvarez has more. She's joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina right now. That's where Harris spoke just a little while ago. What did the vice president have to say, Priscilla?
Well, the vice president renewed her call for another debate. Remember, just moments after the presidential debate concluded on Tuesday, the campaign came out and put another one on the table and said they were ready to go. And that's exactly what the vice president said on the stage only minutes when she started her remarks. Take a listen.
2 nights ago, Donald Trump and I had our first debate. And I believe we owe it to the voters to have another debate. Because this election and what is at stake could not be more important.
Now, the vice president has reason to perhaps want another debate. They felt strongly about the way that it went on Tuesday. They also raked in a lot of cash, $47 million in the 24 hours after the debate. And the campaign isn't taking former President Donald Trump for his word yet on whether or not one happens. But she has chosen to come here to North Carolina. 2 stops. She was in Charlotte here earlier. Now she is in Greensboro. North Carolina is, of course, a state that the campaign wants to keep in play. President Joe Biden lost it in 2020. It's been years since a Democrat has won in the state, but they think that because of the unpopular gubernatorial GOP candidate and because reproductive rights is such an important issue among voters here, that they can make headway. Tomorrow, she heads to Pennsylvania, another battleground state, an important one where she's trying to appeal to voters. Wolf.
All right, Priscilla, thank you very much. Priscilla Alvarez on the scene for us. Thank you. Let's bring in more of our political experts right now. Alyssa Farah Griffin. Are you surprised Trump is now refusing to face off against Kamala Harris for a second time?
I'm not surprised, but I would predict that he may change his tune on this. Listen, if Kamala Harris sees a bump in the polls from her performance in the debate, where I think most folks think that she won, I could see a world where in a couple weeks, Donald Trump actually says, I challenge her to a debate. He'll likely say that he wants it to be on a favorable network. He'll likely ask for it to be certain moderators. But I could see him thinking if things get a little bit tighter in the final 8-week stretch, he might need a big moment to remain competitive against her. So I wouldn't rule out that there will be another one. And I think it's incredibly smart politics that the vice president got ahead and was the one to first call for the second debate. It puts Trump on the defensive, a place he doesn't like to be. So I actually think there's a world in which he tries to flip the narrative and agree to another debate.
Interesting. Brian Lanza, I understand you're now a senior advisor with the Trump campaign. Is Trump scared to debate Kamala Harris again?
First of all, thank you for having Wolf. No, it's not a function of being scared. It's a function of what are our priorities towards the end of the election. Our goal is to talk to as many voters as possible, and our goal is to paint Kamala Harris as a liberal. And I think we have better opportunities doing it through one-on-one interviews, through our rallies, through going into these states and having this impact than going on the debate that's going to sort of stack the deck against President Trump, not do the proper fact checks against Harris, and sort of delve into that environment. Listen, our goal at this debate was to continue to paint Kamala Harris as a radical liberal, and that's what we did. She didn't respond to any of the accusations we made, and they're going to stick. And whether she had a strong performance or not, we feel we hit our goal of continue to paint this picture that she's radically to the left outside the American mainstream, which has been reflective in the CNN poll and which has been reflected in the New York Times poll. We're very comfortable going into the final 7 weeks.
Megan Hayes, the Harris campaign raised, $47 million in the 24 hours after the debate on Tuesday night. What does that tell you about the momentum she has right now?
Yeah, I mean, they had over 600,000 people who donated about $47 million. So it shows that there is a lot of momentum still in her favor. These debate nights are incredibly lucrative for fundraising. So on top of wanting to have, more substantive conversations for the American people, it's also a huge night for people to bring in more money for their campaign spend. So I do think, they are in a really good place. They have the wind at their back on this. They have a lot of money for their organizing, for door knocking and boots on the ground and to be on air and on radio there. So I think that it's an incredible moment for her to raise so much money in the first 24 hours.
Interesting. Alyssa, we now have the first results from a new substantive poll conducted after Tuesday night's debate. It finds little change in the state of the presidential race. Harris at 47%, Trump at 42%. That's about the same as the 45% for Harris to 41% for Trump. That was the result in the poll just before the debate. So what does that tell you?
This race is neck and neck. I don't think that anyone here, if they're being honest with themselves, could say either is the front runner at this moment. Listen, Trump still performs better than Kamala Harris does on the economy. I think we could argue that Hillary Clinton likely won both debates in 2016, yet she went on to lose. So I think there is so much that's going to happen in this final stretch. But I do think the resources are important. This $47 million, that allows Kamala Harris to be playing in the Sun Belt states, to be expanding the map to all 7 battlegrounds so that she has more optionality in the states that she wins, that it's not just must win Pennsylvania, but there's also some other avenues. So that's a big advantage that she's going to have. And I also think just trying to reach low propensity voters and trying to get some more young people out there. But listen, Donald Trump is playing smart. He's trying to reach some untraditional audiences, the podcasts he's doing, the right-wing audiences of younger men that he's trying to appeal to. So it's so neck and neck. I think it's going to be one of the closest races in a generation.
Certainly seems to be neck and neck right now. Brian, Kamala Harris once again today repeated that she's the underdog in this race. Does Donald Trump see himself as the favorite?
No, listen, you know politics better than anybody else. You're either running hard or you're running scared. So we're running hard. Kamala Harris is going to do the same thing. I expect nothing less of our Democratic opponents. But we have our priorities, and she knows hers. Our priorities are to paint a picture of a San Francisco liberal, something that she's been her entire professional career, and how that's outside the mainstream of America, certainly outside the mainstream of Pennsylvania and Michigan. And we're going to effectively do that. We've done that effectively in the last month and a half, in spite of all this media buzz on the TV of the race being reset, we still see her drifting further to the left as voters see that. That is a success for us, and we're going to continue to drive that message through November.
Interesting. Megyn, Kamala Harris just launched in your state and other battleground states this. Watch this.
A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest? Being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Megyn, voters already favor Kamala Harris on this issue of reproductive rights. Would it make more sense to focus in on the economy right now, to dig into Trump's advantage with voters on that economic issue?
I think this has been a strong issue for Democrats, and I think it's good to continue to nail that home for folks. I think it builds up your base. It gets to undecided voters. Also, there's a lot of women in the suburbs in these battleground states that are undecided, and I think this is an issue that's important to women. And so I do think that they need to keep hammering it home. Part of having such a large war chest that they are continuing to build is being able to fight on many fronts. So this isn't the only ad they have out. They have ads on the economy. They have ads on immigration. So they are fighting on all fronts here on the different issues to reach those different voters. But this has been known to be a very strong issue for Democrats, and I think it's smart of them to continue to drive it home.
Alyssa, what do you think the messaging from the Kamala Harris campaign should be as they try to seize the momentum from the debate?
So Kamala Harris had a line she used about 5 times in the debate, which is there's more that unites Americans than divides them. She's trying to move to the center. Brian will point out her record was to the left, but she's talking about actual policy issues that resonate with the vast majority of the country. If she can play to the center, talk about the economy, talk about rebuilding the middle class, that works. I actually agree, though, abortion is an animating issue. We've seen red states, deep red, Ohio, Kentucky, Kansas, where there have been ballot initiatives or constitutional amendments around abortion, and even Republicans have turned out to vote for some access. So I think that's more about just energizing voters, but she has got to hit on the economy. That is the #1 issue for voters.